Self-care, are we on it? Brilliant. Okay, so what we're going to do then is we're going to start off with a bit of an introduction to self-care. Apologies for the mix-up just then. Permissions on sharing screens and all that have managed to reset themselves. So what we're going to do, we're going to start off as by way of a bit of an introduction. When we first originally wrote this seminar, it was obviously aimed to be delivered in person. We've adapted it because it's going to be based around working from home, and we've had to modify things slightly. So obviously the first thing that we modified is we spent a big marketing budget on changing this front screen. What we're actually going to do then today, it's going to be about half an hour looking at some of the aspects of self-care and in particular working from home. So first off, we're going to define self-care. What does it mean? What does self-care mean to some different organisations, and how do we interpret that? We're then going to take a look at self-awareness. So self-awareness is about being able to recognise yourself and how you feel on a personal setting when it comes to your personal well-being and managing your own manageable health. We're going to take a look at self-care and some tips for staying well, and then we're going to summarise everything as we come to an end. So the first thing we're going to take a look at is the definition of self-care by the World Health Organization. So the World Health Organization defines self-care as the ability of individuals, families and communities to promote health, prevent disease, maintain health, and to cope with illness and disability with or without the support of a healthcare provider. So that's quite a general overview of what self-care is. Now, when I wrote this seminar, in particular, I was thinking about self-care looking at psychological self-care, so protecting ourselves against chronic stress and anxiety, especially in situations like we're going through at the moment. The World Health Organization definition is very much around physical health as well. So looking at the charity Mind, so the UK mental health charity Mind, they talk about the benefits of self-care. Now, self-care techniques and general lifestyle changes can help manage the symptoms of many mental health problems. They may also help prevent some problems from developing or getting worse. So when we're talking about this current situation at the moment, the HSE, the Health and Safety Executive, they talk about 6 things that need to be managed well at work. And if they're not managed well, they can cause a huge amount of stress. Now, one of those 6 ways is change. So when change occurs within an organisation, it mostly causes a lot of stress, whether it's a good change or a bad change. And we can talk about this transitional curve, or the process of transition that John Fisher talks about. If we don't handle change well, then the likelihood it's going to cause a lot of stress. Now, obviously, we've gone through a huge amount of change recently in the last couple of weeks. And I'm sure a lot of you are finding it very difficult. Some of you will be absolutely loving working from home because you don't have the commute, you don't have to contend with Northern Rail and the nightmare that is public transport. But for some of us, it is way more stressful. So for me personally, working in a little office and getting work done and being productive, to then coming home and trying to homeschool 2 kids whilst juggling my other stuff is a nightmare. But we keep plodding on, we keep going with it. But this is why self-care is so fundamental at the moment. It's about how do you really protect yourself in these difficult times. So as far as our definition from We Are Wellbeing, my kind of thoughts on self-care is looking after your personal, physical, mental, social and financial well-being. So looking after all aspects, all 4 pillars of the well-being structure. But then being able to manage the manageable. I think one thing that we need to be really clear about when we talk about manageable health, it's not trying to be perfect. It's not having all good days. It's not trying to do the best thing all the time, because it's not possible. So as an example, yesterday I had a really, really, really crap day. I got way too stressed with the kids. I was trying to do work. The kids kept coming in and interrupting me while I was trying to do recordings. It was just a nightmare, and I lost the plot completely. I don't mind admitting that, but I think it's just making sure that we realise actually yesterday for me was a really bad day. But it doesn't have to continue into a bad couple of days or a bad week. It's about stopping it in its tracks and doing some things to really look after yourself. So this morning I made sure I got up, built a little routine for myself. So I wrote in my diary, told myself what I needed to do. I did a little bit of exercise, I got dressed, even putting on my We Are Wellbeing uniform, my t-shirt and my lanyard. It gets me in the frame of mind of being more proactive at work. And sort of defining that difference between, you know what, I am sat at my kitchen table delivering a seminar, but actually this is my little office at the moment, and I need to treat it like that. So these are some of the things and hints and tips that we can start to put together. So it's managing the manageable, not getting overly stressed and worried about the things that are out of our control. Obviously the situation at the moment with coronavirus is really, really difficult, and people are going to be experiencing a lot of worry and a lot of anxiety. But what we need to do is make sure that we are getting hold of some credible sources of information. People are putting some absolute garbage on social media. There's loads of rubbish, loads of misinformation, loads of poorly educated information being bounded around about coronavirus at the moment. And people are sort of scaremongering and getting really, really worried. So it's just making sure that we get our information from legitimate sources and reliable sources. So places like NHS website, places like the World Health Organization statistics. If you are, obviously keep informed, maintain some sort of clarity on what the current information is and what the recommendations are, but not getting completely wrapped up in it. So also consuming some positive literature and some positive videos as well. So trying to stay lighthearted as much as you can. So as far as self-care goes, I think a great place to start with self-care is some sort of self-awareness. So when I talk about self-awareness, I think about looking after our brain, but looking after our personal state of mind. Now, one of the questions I always ask on a training course, so if any of my wellbeing champions are logged in today, you'll recognise this question. Are you honest to yourself about your own emotional state? I think this is a fundamental place to start, because it's asking yourself, do you recognise when you're having a good day or when you're having a bad day? A lot of people really, really struggle. They bury their head in the sand, and they don't admit to themselves when they're having a bad day. And the issue with that is, if you don't recognise a bad day for what it is, it's much easier for that bad day to roll into 2 bad days or 3 bad days, and therefore you end up having a bad week or a bad fortnight. And before you know it, we've got some more serious issues going on. So I think a great place to start with self-care is this level of self-awareness. If you're having a bad day, recognise it for what it is. And then you can start to implement some sort of positive psychology, some positive coping strategies to deal with it. So here's some tips on self-awareness. So first of all, keeping a journal of how you feel. So with regards to keeping a journal, I'm not a prolific writer. I don't sit down and write all my feelings methodically. But a journal could be something simple like having a traffic light system on your diary. So yesterday for me would have absolutely been a red day, a bad day. But today, I'm sure today's got off to a great start. The kids have actually listened to me. You guys have all joined me. Bit of a wobble at the start, trying to get the tech working, but ultimately today's going to be a green day. And just keeping a track of that. And then once you've done a bit of journaling, or once you've done a bit of self-awareness around what does a good day look like, you can then start to notice traits and what are the kind of things that cause a bad day to come around. And you might be able to do something about it. For me, I noticed that I have, and I've talked about this before, I have a bad day, a really bad day, probably about once every 6 weeks. I don't particularly know why it comes around. I don't know whether you call it man time of the month or whatever you want to call it, but generally that is a rubbish day. But I recognise it for what it is, and I know that it comes around, but I also, when it is that day, I know that it'll go, and I know that the next day is probably going to be fine, and 99% of the time it is. So it's just recognising it for what it is. Then it's making personal and daily personal and professional goals. It's really easy when working from home to get a bit overly relaxed. Yesterday I did this, and this is probably partly why I had a bad day. I stayed in my scruffs. I was in my scruffy tracksuit bottoms and a t-shirt. I don't think I didn't even get. I'll be honest, I didn't even get a shower yesterday. I did brush my teeth, but it's making some sort of professional, conscious effort to stay on form. So one of the things I endeavour to do on a daily basis is I will write down what I need to do from a personal level. So that might be going and doing some exercise, it might be walking the dog, it might be playing in the garden with the kids, getting my body moving. But then from a professional point of view, it might be, okay, today I'm going to deliver 3 webinars. I'm going to contact X amount of potential clients. I'm going to write X amount of content. I'm going to have a meeting with my team via WebEx. Any of those kind of things, I'll write that down and make sure that I do it. And when we do those things and we achieve, we get this sense of achievement, which is beneficial for our sense of purpose. Then we've got building personal resilience. So as far as building personal resilience, we've probably never needed resilience more than we do right now. There's a lot of psychological struggles out there. People are having their own little battles, working in isolation. Like I said, some of us love it, some of us it is our worst nightmare. So it's just keeping on track of this and using the things that you can rely on to bounce back. We're going to have good days and we're going to have bad days, but figuring out what resilience looks like for you. On the note of resilience, a really good place to start is doing some sort of psychometric assessment, a bit of self-discovery. So as far as self-discovery goes, a great place to start would probably be something like the Robertson Cooper iResilience report. I'll send out the link afterwards. But Robertson Cooper, so just down the road from Manchester Uni on Oxford Road, they have a resilience diagnostic called iResilience. It's delivered online. And they offer it for free, but what they do is they will give you, they offer it for free, but they will use all the results anonymously for national statistics. So it's a really good place to start. And that'll give you some good information as well. And then finally, learning how to utilize guided relaxation. One of the things you'll notice then, and I've put this in self-awareness on purpose, because if you don't practice guided relaxation, when you do try it, your mind will wander all over the place. You'll try and focus on your breath or do some sort of breathing technique, and you'll start thinking about cereals, or you start thinking about what's for tea, or start thinking about nipping down to Tesco to buy some chocolate. Obviously, they're my go-to mind-wandering issues. But what this is really useful for is giving yourself more focus in the long run and becoming more mindful in general. So I personally use a technique called 4-5-6, where I inhale for 4 seconds, I will hold my breath for 5 seconds, and I will exhale for 6 seconds, and I'll repeat it. Now, when I first started doing that, my mind would wander all over the place. But when I do that now, I can become more focused, it becomes clearer, I become more productive because I've become more focused on the work that I'm doing and the task at hand. And it just gives me those little mini breaks. And I think what mindfulness is really useful for is just having moments of calm. So when I'm trying to work and I've got daddy asking me, all these questions firing at me, and most of the questions are just completely irrelevant. Yesterday I got asked, Daddy, do you like the smell of vinegar? Daddy, who's the third tallest person in my class? Who gives a monkeys? It's just absolutely crackers. But this is the stuff I'm contending with at the moment. I don't know if anybody can relate. So this is where mindfulness comes in really useful. Another aspect of self-awareness then is recognizing what are these signs and symptoms. So we've got stress, we've got anxiety, and we've got depression. So within here, we've got a range of physical, we've got a range of sort of emotional, and a range of behavioral signs and symptoms. It's not about being able to recognize all of those signs and symptoms and categorize them into stress, anxiety, or depression. What this is really about is being able to recognize change within yourself. So if you recognize what a good day looks like, a good task to do is actually write a list down what makes a good day good. So for instance, for me, a good day for me is when I get up and I get some exercise done first thing in the morning. I go for a bike ride, I go to the gym. Obviously can't go to the gym at the moment, so I do a little workout in the garden. If I walk the dog on a daily basis, if I get all my emails answered, if I get back to everybody that I need to get back to, that contributes to a good day. If I do a good level of work and we get some good feedback, that makes a good day good. So then it's being able to recognise, what makes a bad day? Bad day for me is not being productive. It's about arguing with the kids. It's about if I don't get any exercise in, that contributes to a bad day, and having this level of self-awareness. So take those with a pinch of salt. You don't have to remember all of those by any stretch, but it's just a good reference point for being able to recognise some of the signs and symptoms. Now, one thing that I always err on the side of caution with this. Now, I could look at any of those for depression, for example. I could look at any of the signs and symptoms for depression. Now, if I'd have looked at that list yesterday, I could have said, absolutely, I am depressed. but I'm not depressed. I just had a bad day. So it's recognizing it for what it is. But if it lapses and it keeps going and going and going, then it's something worth thinking about. So then what we can then do is summarize all of this and as a bit of a task. So a simple task for you to all try then is to use something called bucket theory. So when we use bucket theory, we use 4 simple steps. So the first thing is to draw yourself a bucket. So you've got a pen and paper handy, draw yourself a bucket. So here's, like in the style of Blue Peter, here's one I made earlier. It's not a fancy bucket, but it's more of a flower pot, but let's call it a bucket. The first thing we need to do then is add in our daily stresses, the things that we are currently worried about, the things that we fret about, the things that cause us to get some level of stress. So for me, let's talk about ill health. So worrying about ill health, that could be one. It could be, so as far as ill health, it could be for worried about family members, etc. Workload. So for me, juggling, trying to run a business, trying to keep a business while obviously all this is happening. So as a trainer, obviously all of our in-person delivery has just gone up in smoke. So it's about bending and flexing and doing things like webinars that change the way we work. The kids, the number one thing I am most proud of is the kids, but they are absolutely my number one stressor. And then finally, coronavirus. I've put that in there because I am not a natural worrier, but I would say that I am worried about coronavirus. I am taking it seriously. I'm leaving the house to go buy food and do a bout of exercise. And if I am exercising, I'm doing it first thing in the morning or later on at night to make sure that I'm not interacting with as many people. And taking those precautions because, you know, it needs to be taken seriously. So they're the kind of things that I would put in my bucket. Now, what you've got to consider then is if all those things were thrown into my bucket and my bucket starts to overflow, what does that look like in real life? Does that look like a breakdown? Does that look like somebody being irrational, yelling when they don't need to yell, being aggressive, adopting negative coping strategies, so like drinking, recreational drugs, alcohol, having sustained low mood because of the level of stress? These are all things that could be contributing. So what we need to do then is create some sort of holes in the bucket. So there are my holes in the bucket. So the holes in the bucket represent the things that we can do to alleviate that level of stress. So that might be creating some positive coping strategies. So earlier I mentioned things like alcohol and drinking and recreational drugs and aggression and sort of self-isolating and those kind of things. Not isolating in the good sense of what we're doing now, but self-isolating in the bad sense of being withdrawn. But adopting some positive coping strategies. So things like exercise is fantastic. Getting your endorphins up, make yourself feel good. So the black dog video that we show on some of our courses, it states that physical activity can be as effective on mild to moderate depression as taking antidepressants. So get off your butt, go for a walk. Boris has said that we've got a walk a day or a jog a day or a cycle or a run a day. Use it. Get yourself out there and get some fresh air, some vitamin D, and get active. Then we've got practicing mindfulness. So giving yourself some moments of calm during all the madness. It might be the struggle with work and taking 5 minutes and just doing some relaxation, some guided relaxation. There's loads and loads of fantastic content out there. Obviously, Headspace, they've put out a free, I think it's called Weathering the Storm. They've put out a free guided relaxation on the Headspace app that people can access, and it's been specifically put together for this current situation, so that might be a good thing to check out. Having some me time, that comes into play, and I think it's really good to emphasize that this is not selfish at all. Everybody should have some me time. So for me, my me time works when my wife comes in from work. I walk out and I go do something because I need, so by the time 3:30 comes and I've had the kids all day and I've been homeschooling and been doing all my other stuff, I am desperate for a little bit of me time. So for me, my me time looks like going in the garden and shooting a bit of basketball. And even if it's just half an hour or 10 minutes just shooting around, that gives me a little bit of time by myself just to do that. And finally, practicing positive psychology. So obviously positive psychology, we talk about Martin Seligman, the PERMA model. I'm not going to get into it in too much detail, but it's just practicing the positive things that we know that reinforce and make us feel good. So these are things like having some sort of sense of purpose in life, having authentic relationships, having some sort of meaning in life, achieving things, all the things that put together that make up the PERMA model. If you obviously feel free to go and Google it. We obviously have webinars on that as well. So positive psychology. So you can see it's about creating this level of balance. The next thing that I wanted to look at was the 6 ways to wellbeing and remote working. So I've adapted these somewhat to represent how do we stay well while working from home. Obviously, normally it's the 5 ways to wellbeing from the New Economics Foundation, but Manchester Uni, you've got the 6 ways, which is really, really good actually, and I'll explain why in a minute. So the first way to wellbeing is connecting with other people. Now this is the one that's been put on hold for a lot of us, but it's getting creative. It's having different ways of communicating with each other. So whether it's having more phone calls, whether it's having WebExes. I was talking to one of my friend James yesterday, and what we're going to do is we're going to have a remote night out. So him and his missus, my friend Ben and his wife, my friend Chris and his fiance, me and my wife Victoria, we're going to get some rum and coke. We're gonna get some, a bit of funk and soul on Saturday night, and we're gonna phone all our friends. We're gonna have a video call like this and get drunk, because you know what? Why not? It's about finding the balance and getting creative. So connect with other people. Obviously, alcohol in moderation. Obviously, being active. So being physically active, getting outside, like I mentioned earlier about the endorphins. So getting your body moving. So that's a great thing to be doing on a daily basis. We've then got taking notice. So taking notice for me refers to 2 things. One is being mindful, so taking notice of the world around you, reconnecting with your senses. It also refers to taking notice of yourself, so being self-aware. So noticing when the bad days rear its head, noticing when you're struggling and you need to have a little bit of a break, or you need to open up to somebody else and have a chat about it. So that's what take notice, kind of in my interpretation of take notice anyway. Then we've got learning, so keeping your brain active. So a great time to be reading the books, doing some sort of qualification, doing something that kind of progresses you, because obviously we've got more time indoors, more time to bettering ourselves in that sense. So keeping the brain active as much as you can. Just going back, just to mention then, with learning, I've also put in here not dwelling on all the negatives. So it's really easy to keep focus on all the negative press at the moment. If I go on Facebook now or Twitter, there is loads and loads of negativity. People putting misinformation, scaremongering, putting all the nasty facts on about the coronavirus, all the bad things that are happening in the world, comparing ourselves to Italy every 2 seconds, and we're 2 weeks behind them. We absolutely have to take this stuff seriously, but we can get consumed by all the negativity as well, and that's obviously going to lead to other sort of psychological issues for a lot of us. So I think that's something that we really need to pay attention to. So consume some positive material. Give refers to giving people time. I think one thing that you'll have all have noticed, for every toilet roll hoarder and pasta hoarder out there, there's 10 more people doing some amazing things. The other day I saw that government asked for, was it something like 250,000 volunteers, and they got 500,000 within the first day. There's some really good people doing some fantastic stuff out there. So make a conscious effort to help each other, look after each other, have each other's backs, and brighten someone else's day. Then finally, more important than ever, be healthy. So wash your hands, look after yourself, take your exercise, get a good night's sleep, look after your personal hygiene, all the essential things. What I'd encourage everybody to do is just go back to basics. So forget the complicated exercise regimes, forget doing split sets and trisets and supersets and all the other stuff that some people do in gyms, for example. Just be healthy. Just focus on the baseline simple things: sleep, physical activity, and nutrition. If you get those 3 things right, a lot of the other stuff will fall into place anyway. Okay, so here's some tips for self-care. So the first one, as far as working from home, is have some sort of routine. So even though we don't necessarily need to be up and out of the house for say 6:30 and getting on the train to work, making sure that you have a specific bedtime, you wake up at the same time every day, and keep that level of routine. It will make sure that you keep some sort of purpose in life. A purpose in life is fundamental for sort of staving off any type of low mood and depression. So keeping a routine. So write yourself a routine on a daily basis. Structure your day. I was talking to A guy called Rob Baker. I don't know if you've heard of, some of you will have heard of Rob Baker. Rob Baker's just written a book on personalization of work, and I was chatting to Rob. I know Rob's got he's got work going on, and he's got 2 kids at home, and he's just written this book. And I was with him the other week, and Connected HR do up in Newcastle, and I was asking, how on earth did you manage to sit down and write a book? You know, I can't even write a blog on most days, and this guy's gone and written a book. And he was saying what he does is he does 25-minute blocks. So he'll set himself aside 25 minutes dedicated to just doing that. He won't get interrupted by anything else. He won't start answering emails. He won't start looking on his phone. He'll just focus for 25 minutes on a particular task. I've been doing it since. It's fantastic. So if you're struggling to get motivated, if you're struggling to stay productive, set yourself 25 minutes and then break away from it and go do something else. But it's amazing how much you can do in 25 minutes when you're focused on one task alone. So try giving that a go, and hopefully you'll find that more productive. We've then got taking breaks, so actually scheduling in breaks. Just like obviously you don't have your colleagues tapping you on the shoulder asking if you want to come for a walk or go for a brew. So it's putting breaks throughout the day. Make sure that that'll help you to stay productive throughout the day. Then we've got workspace. So defining your workspace, making sure that whatever your workspace looks like. I did a little video earlier showing what my workspace looks like. So I'm sat at my dining room table. Now for me, this is my office for the foreseeable. And what I do is I make sure that it's functional. So I've got my water on hand. If I need some snacks, I'll have some snacks. I'll have some fruit. So I'm not constantly having to go over to the short walk to the kitchen. I'm making it functional in the area that I need to be in. And then also, obviously, this also needs to be a dining room table as well, so it's easily closed and easily put away again. But I make sure every morning before I start trying to work, I define my workspace. Then we've got mental health, so looking after our psychological well-being. So first of all, prioritising sleep. We saw some recent research, and it said that there isn't a single mental health condition that isn't associated with poor sleep. So every single I don't know if I said that right, every single mental health condition out there has some form of association with poor sleep. So prioritizing sleep, making sure that you build a bedtime routine, you do the things that you should be doing. If you haven't, check out the video that's on the Manchester University site on sleep, a talk that I did a couple of years ago, it might have been last year. So prioritize sleep. Practice your daily mindfulness techniques. If you don't know what mindfulness is, Google mindfulness, find a technique that works for you. A great place to start is probably like I said, the Headspace app is brilliant. I use that. It works for some but not for others, but give it a go. Communicating, so make sure that you stay communicating with your colleagues and your family and your friends. So even though we're isolated and we are working from home, there's no reason why we can't keep up communication. And then gratitude. We're worrying a lot at the moment. There's all the doom and gloom. I was feeling sorry for myself the other week because we were supposed to be going away at Easter. I was supposed to be taking the kids to Florida at Easter. It's all been scrapped, and I thought, God, this is absolutely rubbish. But then, you sit down, you write a gratitude list, and you put things in perspective. We're all healthy. My mum and dad are healthy. My mother-in-law and her partner are healthy. That's the important thing. So when you start to do some sort of gratitude list, like writing 3 things down that you feel grateful for, it quite quickly puts things into perspective. Physical well-being, like I said, going back to basics. So drinking plenty of water, you drink your 2 litres a day, so your 6 to 8 glasses, so 250 ml for each. Limiting caffeine as much as you can, so 2 to 3 cups a day. I've got an on-tap coffee machine over there. I could be hammering the caffeine, but I know if I do, it'll ruin my sleep, it'll ruin my energy for the next day, and I'll become unproductive. So making sure you don't overdo the caffeine. Keeping sat down is a danger in the workplace anyway, but obviously when we've got comfy sofas, we've got Netflix, we've got box sets and all the rest of it, sitting could become a bit of an issue. So getting off your butt, going into the garden, going for a walk around the block, walking up and down some stairs, trying to be as active as you can. Use that in line with your mini breaks that you can schedule in to try and get as active. If you've got a worktop, putting your laptop on your worktop and working standing up, trying to mix it up as much as you can there. Nutrition, not going to go too much into nutrition because we've got some nutrition webinars coming up, but consuming a healthy diet. Obviously making sure you've got a good balanced diet that's going to provide you with plenty of energy. It's really, I've noticed my big challenge working from home is eating. first 2 days, I wasn't out of the fridge. So trying to have some sort of control, bit of self-control, to not be eating constantly whilst at home. You'll regret it when the curfew when the curfew lifts. Then we've got then looking after your health, so looking after good hygiene, etc., and being physically active as far as doing some sort of maybe some sort of weight training. If you've got any weights at home, getting out in the garden and do some form of exercise that's a bit more physical, and weight bearing, not just a walking or jogging or running. Gardening's a great thing to be doing if you've got a garden. I put together some simple exercises, really simple. So this is the idea behind a sort of like a high intensity interval training. So what you would do with interval training is you pick, say, 4 exercises that you don't really need any equipment for. So for instance, on the top line, you've got the beginner, so you've got doing some squats. So you would do, say, 20 seconds of squats, and then you take a 10-second rest. And then you might do 20 seconds of push-ups. If you can't do full press-ups, you can put your knees down and do a half press-up, but 20 seconds of them, and then you take a 10-second rest. Then you might do some stepping up and stepping down for 20 seconds. You take a 10-second rest, and then some lateral raises for your shoulders. So that could be a tin of beans, it could be a water bottle, it could be anything. Raise it up and down for your shoulders, and then take a 10-second rest, and then you repeat it again. And that's a 4-minute workout. So you will all have 4 minutes, but that's a really simple way of just getting in some high-intensity exercise to sort of keep your body working and sort of functioning well. Here's a slightly more advanced version. So you've got like a squat with a jump, you've got a clapping press up. Be very careful with clapping press up. If you've got bad wrists, I don't want anybody suing me because you've broken your wrists. So maybe just err on the side of caution with clapping press ups. Doing some sort of lunge off a step or off a bench, and then a single-handed shoulder press, and you can vary that up. There's loads and loads of exercises. I've just put, you don't have to do those. That's just a bit of an idea to give you a bit of inspiration. If you want any exercise ideas, ping us an email and I'll send you a link. We've got loads of information on exercise and training from home. I might even send you a video. So in summary then, we've got notice the signs. So pay attention to yourself, pay attention to your mood, pay attention to what's happening around you, and obviously those that you're living with as well. So this is not just about you, it's about the people that you live with. So try and, if you recognize any of those signs, what can you do about it? Maybe write yourself a bucket theory. Do yourself a bucket. Do your signs of stress going in and your signs of in your stress relievers coming back out. That's a good thing for kids to do as well. It's good for kids to kind of do some self-awareness. I did that with my 2 yesterday, and they found it really useful. They actually quite enjoyed it as a bit of a task. Plan your day, so have some sort of schedule that you can stick to. Obviously, schedules, even in work, they don't always pan out, so make sure it's flexible so you don't get too stressed when things don't go to plan. Be active daily, so get out for your daily bout of exercise. Eat a balanced diet, so we can send you some more information on what a balanced diet looks like if you're not too sure, but not over-consuming or under-consuming, looking after yourself. Find some work-life balance. That becomes even harder when you're working from home because work has become home, so your office has become, the bedroom has become the office, or the kitchen's become the office. So making sure that you define that workspace and you can close it down so you don't feel like you're constantly at home and you don't feel like you're constantly at work. Try and find that some sort of differentiation. Then finally, probably the most important message that you're going to hear: toilet paper will not save you. Hopefully that's been useful. If anybody has got any questions, I think there's about 75 or 80 of you that signed up. So I'm not going to take questions off 80 people. So if you want to ask me any questions, you can contact us via any of these. So my email address is andy@wearewellbeing.co.uk. The website is wearewellbeing.co.uk, and on Twitter it's WAW Wellbeing. So WA Wellbeing. So if anybody has any questions, you want to drop us a message, that's fantastic. What I will do is, let me just end this. Stop sharing. I'm back. Everybody well? Was that useful? So hopefully that gives you some hints and some tips. I'm going to go play basketball in the garden now with the kids. I might have an afternoon gin and tonic just to kind of keep everything in balance. Take care of yourselves. If anybody's got any questions, get in touch with us, and hopefully I will see you in person at some point. Take care, everybody.